Recording in progress.
Okay, everybody, I think it's time to begin. Councilor Markowitz, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Please be aware that this meeting is both being audio and video recorded, and we have some counselors who are online, and let me see who they are. We have Counselors Wright, Danberg, Downs, Gentile, Kelly, Noel, and Oliver online. The rest, we're missing a few, but everybody else is here in the room. And now the first call reports. Vice President Lipoff for the Land Use Committee.
Thank you very much, Madam President. The report starts on page 383, our March 21st meeting. 88-23, Alan Taylor, request for an extension of time for special permit 55-21 at 12 Cochituate Road, approved 8-0. 61-23, James Gross and Kiki Bogarad Gross, request for a non-conforming front setback at 18 Highland Avenue, approved 8-0. 71-23, Turnkey Realty Group LLC, request to extend a non-conforming two-family dwelling at 152-154 Lexington Street, approved 8-0. 62-23, Brian McDonald, trustee, Continuous Improvement Realty Trust, request to amend special permit 101-17 to convert an existing office space into 2 residential units at 46 Farwell Street, approved 8-0. I'll move the report, and I have 3 public hearings to assign.
Okay, please go ahead.
And these are all for April 25th. 111-23, Adeline Elmius, request to allow 4 single-family attached dwellings in 2 buildings to waive certain dimensional requirements and 1 parking stall at 77 Hartford Street. 112-23, Paul Wong, request to further increase non-conforming FAR to allow an accessory building with a footprint exceeding 700 square feet and for a dormer within 3 feet of the intersecting wall at 20 Norwood Avenue. And the last one, 113-23, Shauna Guerin and Robert Dunn, trustees of D&G Realty Trust, request to add 40 patio seats and to remove 6 parking stalls and to amend special permit 501-94 Parens 2 and 344-346 at 344-346 Elliott Street. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Crossley for the Zoning and Planning Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The Zoning and Planning Committee met twice last week, first on Monday, March 27th. The first item is 227-22, which was held, but we set a public hearing. So it's the request for an ordinance to regulate embodied carbon in new construction, and the amendment is to require reporting, and the public hearing on that was set for 4/24/23. Next, several items were held that evening. The next item is 95-23, is Her Honor the Mayor reappointing William Winkler to the Urban Design Commission for a term of office to expire June 1, 2026. That was approved 7-0. And 96-23, the reappointment by Her Honor the Mayor of James Doolin to the Urban Design Commission for a term of office to expire on March 1st, 2026, also approved 7-0. We next met 2 nights later on Wednesday, March 29th. Both items were held, but what I would like to suggest is we had about 2/3 of the council present, which was terrific. For those who were not able to attend, the audio is linked to the report as usual, and you might want to hear the presentation on state guidance for implementing the Housing Choice Bill. We got a very clear presentation on both our zoning reform for village centers and what we have to do and what things comply and what may not comply and what we might have to do to increase compliance. So I'll leave it at that, but I recommend that you take a listen so that we can all be on the same page as we move forward with these two efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Councilor Krinsman from the Programs and Services Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Programs and Services Committee met on Wednesday, March 22nd. First couple of items were held. Item 6723, this was amendments to section 11.5 on requirements for permitted haulers to provide bundled trash and recycling services. This item was approved 7-0. Item 109-22, this is requesting an ordinance to require universal recycling services. This item was voted no action necessary by a vote of 7-0. The next item was held. The next two items, I need to ask for a suspension of the rules. 9723 and 9823 were improperly referred to Programs and Services and Finance when they should have been referred to Zoning and Planning. However, I'm fully confident that the Programs and Services Committee handled these reappointments very effectively and efficiently, and I would ask that we suspend the rules to allow them to be considered today.
So Councilor Krinsman has asked for a suspension of the rules so that the Programs and Services Committee can be accepted as a committee that reappointed these folks instead of the Zoning and Planning Committee. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed, no. Thank you very much. Please go ahead.
So item 9723, this was the reappointment of Susan Lunan to the Conservation Commission, and it was approved 7-0. Item 9823, the reappointment of Jeffrey Zabel to the Conservation Commission, was also approved 7-0. Last item, item 99-23, this is the reappointment of Elizabeth Wilkinson to the Urban Tree Commission, and that was approved by the committee 7-0. With that, Madam President, I would move the report, but I do want to then talk about item on the reports docket. Item 123-23 is substantially similar to a matter that we have taken up in the last 12 months, and therefore it needs an affirmative vote of the council to be admitted.
You mean the new docket?
The new docket
New
item, that's
docket.
right. Did I say it wrong?
You
Sorry.
said reports docket, but never mind.
Not the reports docket, the new docket. I apologize. Maybe we should have asked Zoning and Planning to handle this for me. In my So this deals with artificial turf. And as folks know, it's a matter that we've dealt with as a council a couple of times. We took a vote on a citizen's petition. And that citizen's petition is very similar to the docket language we have before us. So I'm happy to open it up. I would actually suggest that we reject the item and not refer it because we also have a separate docket item that the president filed, which is a discussion item with Parks, Rec, and Culture about turf. So we have the matter before us again to discuss the safety of artificial turf. So I would suggest that 123-23 not be accepted. So I would move rejection of the item.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Councilor Baker.
wouldn't it be appropriate if that is an item that is on the docket to make it a second call discussion as opposed to first call?
Well, we don't want to accept it to the docket, so,
I know, but generally, if we have an item that is going to be contested on the, as opposed to trying to take it on a first call, I would suggest it be just held a second call, and then it'll be
okay,
accepted as
so
part
our
of
rules are totally silent on the matter, but if you would like to send it to second call, we will send it to second call.
Thank you.
Yeah, Madam President, I would agree. I would say if folks want to have discussion on this, second call is a more appropriate
That's
venue for
good.
that.
That's fine. Good.
Okay, thank you. With that, I move the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Downs for Public Safety and Transportation.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My report begins on page 386. There are two items. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Number 7623, requesting authorization to petition the general court to allow the mayor to appoint retired firefighters to be able to perform fire details and perform dispatch duties. These are distinct from police details. We approved 7-0. And 109-22, 23, request to transfer $450,000 to traffic safety regular salaries. This fulfills 2 3-year agreements, one of them with the parking control officers, the other with the crossing guards, and we approved 7-0. And with that, I move the report.
Thank you very much, and we hope you feel better fast. Counselor Leary from Public Facilities Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. Public Facilities, actually, we met jointly with Programs and Services to discuss the Gath Pool item, and that item was held, so there's actually no report. However, I do have a public hearing to assign.
Please go ahead.
And I would just also like to remind the council that we are not meeting this week due to the Passover holiday, and we'll, I believe all the 3 Ps are meeting next week on the 12th and the 19th, including Public Facilities, which we have a pretty hefty agenda for those 2 meetings as well, which I'll be sending out soon. So the public hearing starts on page 391, and this is a 12823. This is a request for a grant of location by National Grid to install and maintain methane gas. And this is essentially on Valentine Street, some 2,600 feet of replacement plastic pipe. And with that, I'm finished.
Thank you. Thank you. Counselor Grossman for the Finance Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. The report begins on page 388, and the Finance Committee met on Monday, March 27th. The first item, 106-23, appropriation of $244,821.31 for homeless student transportation, was approved 7-0. Item 107-23, request to transfer $125,000 to the Human Resources Department consultants line item, was approved 7-0. Item 109-23, the request to transfer $450,000 to traffic safety regular salaries was approved 7-0. Item 108-23 was held. And with that, I move the report.
Thank you very much. Counselor Laredo for the Real Property Reuse Committee.
Thank you, Madam President. There is no report this evening.
Thank you. Before we call the roll, I believe Counselor Norton has a resolution for us.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. I offer up a resolution to extend best wishes to Muslims in Newton, the United States and worldwide for a joyous and meaningful observance of Ramadan, a holy month of prayer, fasting, charity, and reflection. Whereas Islam is one of the world's major religions and part of our shared faith tradition, and whereas Muslims have been a part of the fabric of America for over 400 years, since the first Muslims in America arrived as slaves, and whereas the Commonwealth of Massachusetts is home to 131,000 Muslims, and their Muslim faith is welcome here, and whereas the Muslim community is one of the most racially diverse faith groups in the United States and has enriched the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, whereas Ramadan is the holy month of fasting and spiritual renewal for Muslims worldwide, and the 9th month of the Muslim calendar year, and whereas Ramadan is a time to reflect spiritually, build communally, give to charity, and a reason to celebrate and express gratitude, and whereas Ramadan begins at dusk on March 23rd, 2023, and lasts for 1 lunar month, with the first and last dates determined by the lunar Islamic calendar. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Council goes on record to recognize the commencement of Ramadan, a holy month of prayer, fasting, charity, and reflection, and resolved that the Council extends best wishes to Muslims in Newton, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, the United States, and worldwide, a joyous and meaningful observance of Ramadan.
Thank you very much. And now, Madam Clerk, we can call the roll.
Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
Counselor Crossley.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile.
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Kritzman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz.
Aye.
Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Counselor Oliver.
Aye.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 24 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you very much. And now moving on to second call. The first item is 50422. Vice President Lipoff, would you like to summarize this project for us?
Sure thing. This is 71 Commonwealth Ave LLC. Request to allow 6 single-family attached dwellings at 71 Commonwealth Ave and 15 Algonquin Road. It was approved by Land Use 7-1. We held it at our last meeting because we were short some counselors and wanted to give the opportunity for everybody to speak on this and to vote on it. This has evolved over time. It is 6 units. It's 5 new units and the preservation of a Mission Spanish-style beautiful home that we all wanted to save. It has, they originally 3 of them were attached, and the second iteration split those 3 up. So all 6 units are not attached yet. They are attached by an underground parking facility for 15 spaces underground. There are other spaces above. Certain things changed due to feedback. The driveway was narrowed from the first iteration to the latest, so the relief was no longer needed. Lot coverage decreased, open space increased, and I'll save my comments on how I feel for later, but just to point out the process that we go through on land use quite often is to look at what the by right is. And the by right happens to be 6 units, similar to the number of units here, obviously. And, but they would be split up onto 3 lots. There's one house at 15 Algonquin that's going to be taken down to combine the lots to allow this to happen. It's quite a large site when you put them together. There'll be a garage that is added to the existing home for an additional 2 spaces, and there's 2 more surface spaces, 2 or 3, 2, at the end of the driveway, the main driveway. The by right would have, I think, 4 driveways coming into this property. There are 2 with what is proposed. One major driveway on the right side coming in and going underground for the spaces, and then 2 spaces created in front of a 2-car garage added to the home that's being saved. There was a lot of debate as to what were the right number of units here. The number of units that are being proposed matches what the by right is. However, there were some people that would have loved to have seen more units, and that's a complication on land use. When people want to go up on the number of units, it's not as easy because there's a lot of work. There's a lot of work that's done with planning in the beginning and with the neighborhood in the end. And in the end, this is what was voted on 7-1. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Greenberg, you put this on second call?
Thank you, Madam President. This project is antithetical to what our stated goals are for climate change and for housing in our city. Since my start as a counselor in 2018, we've worked so hard to take every opportunity we could to increase housing and implement policies to combat climate change. But this project clearly does not align with our ongoing efforts. This is 6 very large units with a total living area ranging from 3,800 square feet to 5,900 square feet on a 33,000 square foot lot that is just 800 feet from the green line. There are a total of 19 parking spaces, giving us an astounding parking ratio of 3.2. I cannot recall a project with such a high parking ratio ever coming before us, especially one so close to transit. I'd like to remind my colleagues that we recently unanimously approved 2 projects in Nonantum that were both controversial to the neighborhood because the number of units were seen as too many and the parking spaces too few. As the ward councilor, I've had to work hard to address these concerns and explain how these 2 projects are consistent with our city's housing and environmental goals, and how the project serves the public good. I do not see how this particular project serves the public good. The reasons I support a project in Nonantum must be in line with the reasons why I support a project in Chestnut Hill. It's curious that neighborhoods like Nonantum, Newtonville, and West Newton are asked to understand that higher density and lower parking ratios are needed, but in Chestnut Hill they are not. This project perpetuates the cynical belief held by many residents on the north side that neighborhoods like Chestnut Hill are quote unquote protected, while less affluent neighborhoods in Newton are not. This was highlighted at the land use meeting when the attorney for the project said that the overparking was an insurance policy for the neighborhood. For me, this is a question of fairness and equity. We cannot ask some areas of our city to help fight climate change and increase housing while not asking others. I understand that some of my colleagues are worried that the Buy Right project was a worse option, but I do not share that concern because the unit sizes would actually be smaller. With a FAR of 0.48, each unit would be 2,600 square feet each. The FAR of 0.48 is the same for the special permit project. And the petitioner stated that the historic home would still be preserved. There are several possible redesign options for this project that would be more aligned with our city's goals and provide more public good. So I'm asking that we send this project back to committee to review those options. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Greenberg. I saw Councilor Laredo's hand first.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, colleagues. I'm going to strongly urge you to support this project, and let me explain why. As the chair of land use said a moment ago, and I'm sure he's going to amplify upon this later, land use is all about assessing what is allowed by right versus what the special permit ask is. For example, if we were faced with the equivalent of a TRIO or another large project like that, we of course, as a city council, could choose to help shape that project, constrained only by the possibility that a developer might choose the 40B option. But otherwise, no developer would have taken the site of TRIO and been able to build anything by right that the developer would have wanted to do. So we had, quite appropriately, a role to play there. This is very different. This developer has a very clear, articulated, by right project. And in my opinion, that by right project is completely inferior to the special permit. This is not a matter of, like my colleague from Ward 1 said, of a developer coming in and we say, we'll allow you to use less parking, we'll allow you to have greater density on the site. The developer's coming in asking us for certain relief, and our choice is very simple. Do we grant that relief, or do we allow the developer to build by right? So you got to look at those two differences, and those two differences only. This is not about equity. This is not about climate change. This is about the two alternatives. The by right alternative has far more surface parking, far more surface area taken up, more driveways is aesthetically unpleasing. In contrast, the special permit allows for a much more aesthetically pleasing project, fewer driveways, parking completely, with the exception of a couple of spaces, completely underground. Completely underground. And so when we talk about using land for parking, we're usually saying, well, you could build something more there in lieu of the parking. Here, the parking's underground. And it is, I have to say, as someone who often has concerns about these types of projects, I think there's an exceptionally artfully drawn vision that is quite appropriate for this specific land site. And again, I just have to remind everyone, this is a special permit. We take what is the by right alternative, we take what is before us, and we ask, is the one that is before us better? And it is. So with that, I'll leave it to others. I will add too that this has gone through considerable iteration. The developers had numerous meetings during the course of the project, many of which my colleagues from Ward 7 and I attended. And in my mind, this is far better, not only than the by right alternative, but it's also better than what was originally before us. And that is a sign, in my mind, of a good project. Is it perfect? It never is perfect. It never is perfect. But our job in land use is not perfection. Our job is to get the best possible project we can, and I think this does it. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councilor Leary is next.
Thank you very much, Madam President. I appreciate Councilor Laredo's comments, but I think land use is really off the mark here. This is a property where you fall out of bed and you're at the green line. It's, we hear about the process. Well, the process really needs some improvement. I understand the differences between a by right project and a special permit. This is something I think we need to go back and talk about in terms of where it was in the planning process before it even became before land use. I will associate my comments with my colleague from Ward 1, Councilor Greenberg. And she did speak about how hard we work in Ward 1 regarding housing projects, where we work to reduce parking, make it more sustainable, work on all-electric buildings. And we had two recent ones that came before land use that were approved by the City Council, 194 Adams Street, where there were required 10 parking spots for 5 units. We waived 3 for a total of 7 parking stalls, which is 1.4 parking stalls per unit. And 296 Watertown Street, which also required 10 parking stalls. We waived 7 for a total of 3 parking spaces for 2 housing units, also 1.4. 71 Com Ave is 6 units on 33,000 feet of land, square feet of land, with 19 parking stalls total. As Councilor Greenberg said, over 3 per unit. They're large units. We're not even getting any affordable housing for this site. This could easily be 8 or 12 units. That would have 12 would include 2 exclusionary units. Could have been an ADU within the large single-family home. It is, the good thing about it is I'm very happy that they're going to be keeping the historic home, and there's some things, it is attractive and all that, but I just cannot vote for this. I really can't. It goes against all our goals, our climate goals, and yeah, climate goals are part of our process, and that's something that we should be thinking about. Our parking strategy just out the window. And why? Because it's in Chestnut Hill? Because people are terrified some Boston College students might move in? I mean, I just don't understand this at all. So I would urge it to go back to committee as well. And I won't, otherwise, I mean, I'm not going to be voting for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Leary. Councilor Baker, you're next.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I hear our colleagues, and I understand your points of view, but I respectfully suggest that this is a much better project than started and the as of right, as my colleague has indicated. All of us are very much interested in seeing this site well used, and part of the purpose of the parking is to prevent the spillover into the streets and out onto the neighborhood. And the fact that there's a T nearby is important, but is not decisive in terms of what can happen here. There are some images that the clerk has that I'm glad to show you, just so you can see the as of right versus the by right, if she can put that up. So this is what has been emerged through the land use process, a far more planned unit development kind of project compared to, if you show the next slide, what has been filed as an as-of-right subdivision, which is a far inferior opportunity. And what the developer could do to say that we would like something else, it doesn't decide.
We can't see it.
Sorry, it's not being shown. You want to go back, Ms. Moore?
There it is.
There. So this is what, this is essentially the project that emerged through the land use process. It's a far more planned unit development project. You can see the two access points are much smaller. The open space has been preserved. It's a far better design than what is available as of right, which is the next item, if you would show that. You can see the amount of four, as Councilor Laredo indicated, 4 openings to the street, more paving visible, far less of a desirable site plan, and then go to the next slide, please. And this building is going to be preserved in a much more efficient and better way, and I think the part is that we're going to be, you can take the slides down, thank you, Ms. Moore. The whole idea here is that we have tried very hard to work with the developer and the neighbors to produce a project that we think is far better than the alternative. And I do urge our colleagues to support it because this is one of those situations where I think all members of the Ward 7 delegation were in accord. We have tried to be supportive of colleagues in their circumstances, and I hope that you would do the same in this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Markowitz, did you have your hand up? No. Then I think the next is, did you have your hand up? Somebody over here that I didn't, Councilor Lucas, did you? No? Okay. So the next one is Councilor Grossman.
Thank you, Madam President. I concur with my colleagues from Ward 7, and I won't repeat what they said. I will add that I, too, have watched the evolution of this project through a number of neighborhood meetings that took place before the project was ever filed, and then as it's evolved through the land use process. I think it's a really lovely design. I really was impressed with how the developer took the feedback that they received along the way to result in what was just before you on the screen. And I have to say, I really struggle with some of the comments that were made from my colleagues from Ward 1 that I appreciate. These units, we're getting 6 homes where we had 2, are the kinds of units that families like mine will love and enjoy and cherish coming and moving into Newton. And there are all kinds of homes and configurations throughout the city where that is the case. But we need different configurations of types of homes and units throughout the city that accommodate and appeal to all sorts of different people. On the parking front, I really struggle, and I struggle every time this topic comes up, not just with respect to what we do on the Land Use Committee and Zoning and Planning, but also when we have topics like the parking ban, the overnight parking ban before us. I find us really inconsistent with how we talk about cars and parking and where we think it's okay and where we think it isn't. And when I think about how I live my life, you all know that I have 3 kids now, at pretty different stages of life, almost 12, almost 9, and a baby. I couldn't live my life without 2 cars. And many families that I know where both parents are working and they have a child care provider or they have another family member or those who are reaching further on in their days where they have a college student coming home talk about this tension all the time. So I understand overall where, of course, we're trying to go from a climate perspective, but I also really struggle with how we live our lives today and how we are telling people that they can or can't. So to me, I think this project is a win. I think it's a win for the neighborhood. I do understand the tensions. I really respect where my colleagues from Ward 1 are coming from, but I really do support this, and I hope that the council will as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And next is Councillor Ryan.
Thank you, Madam President. I am not going to support this. I'll vote no if I have to. Speaking for myself, this goes against everything that I feel that I am working towards in the Zoning and Planning Committee, while trying to cut down on parking requirements for new construction in the city, all different ways. This development is calling for over 3 parking spaces per unit, with the Boston College Green Line right down the street. And that's a real sticking point for me. It's a waste of a lot in my eyes, not in everybody's, but in mine. The buy right option would have had smaller units, and what you would have me to vote on is the present form has larger units and just nothing, there's no give back. Nothing's going to be affordable here. And we need affordable, especially when it's that close to transit. You know, I'm not going to get into the, what neighborhoods better off than another one. I think we can share the affordable housing across the board as long as there's public transit there. I wish there was more in my ward, but there just isn't. And this neighborhood has, I'm over there every week, sometimes twice a week. I attend church services across the street. I've been part of, that neighborhood for years, doing different things affiliated with my parish. And if you stand there and look at the housing on Comm Ave across from Boston College, it's all different size, multi-family. I know when you go back a street, it's not. But as far as right along there, it's all different size. 2 families, there's 4 units to a building, and some, it's just all different. So, as I said at the beginning, I just can't in the right mind what I'm trying to do in the Zoning and Planning Committee. I feel sometimes like I'm banging my head against the wall, and that's me. That's my personal belief, so I just couldn't in my right mind vote for this project. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Oliver's next. Councillor Oliver. Oh, no, I guess it was Councillor Oliver. Didn't you have your hand raised? Maybe not. Okay. Councillor Kaler's this is next then.
Thank you, Madam President. I listened intently to both the arguments here, and what Councillor Ryan talked about really hit home, and I've been thinking about this for about a week, and I understand and I see that it's a better design. It looks beautiful, but time and time again, we've committed ourselves to addressing climate and number of units and affordability, and it's just being right down from the T-stop. I also have a real hard time here voting for something that I see that the by right is more pavement and in some ways works against us, but I just think that there could be a middle ground if you go back to the committee and see what can be done, because if we were to do this, it's just saying it's illustrating that we're just being so inconsistent with so many of the things that we've been talking about, and I just don't want to go that way. I feel like this really should go back and be discussed more with the developer. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gentile.
Thank you, Madam President. First, I wanted to address the comments that were made by Councilor Greenberg and Councilor Leary about somehow this is about favoritism for Chestnut Hill and disfavoritism towards a village like Nonantum. Both sets of my grandparents came to Newton in the mid-1900s and both settled in Nonantum. I had 15 aunts and uncles that were raised in Nonantum and chose to live there as adults at some point. And I have many, many cousins that were raised in Nonantum and continue to live in that area and also in other areas of the city. There isn't a village in the city of Newton that means more to me personally than Nonantum does. The two projects that were referenced, I supported it because it was clear that everybody else supported it, including the 3 councilors from Ward 1. So rather than trying to interject my thoughts on the subject, I basically went along because, I can't fight all of these. I spent a considerable time trying to get people to scale down River and Elm Street project in Santander. And much like Councilor Ryan, all I did was bang my head against the wall. Councilor Leary and Councilor Greenberg, if you had wanted to fight those 2 projects in Nonantum that you mentioned, I would have been 100% behind you and in support. If you had wanted to send those projects back to land use in order to get some further concessions for your constituents, I would have gladly supported you, but you didn't do that. As a matter of fact, it saddens me the amount of density that you folks are willing to accept in Ward 1 and particularly in Nonantum. So as far as this being something pro Chestnut Hill and anti Nonantum, you're off base. I'm going to support the project because it's abundantly clear to me that the special permit project overall is a much better project than the by right. So therefore, I'll be voting in favor.
Thank you. Councillor Crossley is next.
Thank you, Madam President. This is an interesting conversation. First, I don't think anyone's disputing the attractiveness of this proposal. I know the petitioners in the back of the room. I introduced myself to them on the way in to see why would one person, we rarely have more than one person in our meetings, so of course this is the one. So I do want to say, look, it's clear to me in studying the project that great pains were taken to make this a really extremely attractive project. Site plan as well is very nicely done, with one exception I'll get to later. But this could have been a beautiful project with many more units. There's no reason that the historic building couldn't have been saved, along with a multifamily project or simply more units in some configuration that drew on the same architectural features that the primary building has. So I don't buy that that is a reason for accepting this project as designed. more than beauty, and beauty's in the eye of the beholder, although we all seem to share this opinion, are the values that we hold and the work we're doing to move things forward. So I have a question. I understand this project went through community meetings because you've said as much before it came to the city council. What was decided in those meetings? Did the petitioner ever come forward with 8 or 10 or 12 units? Because I don't understand, why would a petitioner go through the special permit process to get the same number of units that he could get by right? Doesn't make any sense. It certainly is a costly and lengthy process. So through the chair, if someone can answer this question, that's the question that I have. But before I take that answer, special permit process also provides an opportunity to shape a project. I don't know if that question was ever asked in committee, but I would suggest that that's an important question to ask: the number of units and the configuration and how well it serves our climate goals in proximity to transportation. And I appreciate Councilor Grossman's comments. I always do. They're always very thoughtful. But I'm going to suggest that given the values that we have and the needs we have in our community that we are working so hard to make by right opportunities for, we have a disproportionate amount of very expensive single-family homes, large, with lots of parking, relative to any other type of housing down the line for middle-income folks, for lower-income folks, for folks like us, as a matter of fact, right? So I too have trouble with this. I would rather see it go back to committee.
Councilor Crosley, you need to ask for more time.
I'll ask for 30 seconds, please.
Okay, Councilor Crosley would like 30 seconds more. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Go ahead.
Thank you. So the one thing on the site plan that really bugs me is I understand the project came forward from the petitioner with the house and with the 3 buildings along one side as one building. And that for some reason that I understand had to do with the adjacent neighbor who didn't want the long building, split it into 3. That makes me crazy, because when I think about energy efficiency and compact development and the kinds of things we need generally, it's just a poor decision. You wind up with these 6-foot strips of grass between each of the buildings. It's meaningless, and it does
Councilor
really
Crosley,
nothing.
you need
So-
more time.
Okay, that's all. That was the only other point I wanted to make. I'd love to see if my question could be answered.
Okay. Councilor Lipoff.
Your question was, did we consider more units? 8 units?
No, my question is, before it got into the public process, I understand there were community meetings, the purpose of which I'm sure helped to shape the petition that came forward. Was there ever a moment in time, so it's really 2 parts.
Okay,
Was there ever a moment in time where more units were considered?
Sure. There was a design and review meeting where I think that different numbers of units were kicked around. I was not at the meetings with the neighborhood, so that's something that maybe the Ward 7 councilors can answer. Do you want me to wait for my turn to speak more?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, thank
you. So the next is yes. Do you have a better answer, Councilor Woods? Who would like to answer that? Councilor Baker would like to answer that.
And from my colleagues, my memory is that the developer came to the neighborhood with a 6-unit project. And the reason was that they felt that he could do a better job, and that was the beginning of the conversation, than the as of right in terms of site design and all of the qualities that you want to see in construction in this city. And in response to the communications from the neighborhood and various people who'd looked at it and said, look, this is a better design. And I think it is a better design than an attached building. And so it's not something that got bargained down. This was a better version of what could happen as of right, is my understanding, and subject to correction or amplification by my colleagues.
Councilor Loreno, do you want to amplify that answer?
I'll amplify briefly. Councilor Baker is 100% correct. This is what the developer came to the neighborhood with, and we, as councilors, sat there as listeners, which is what we're supposed to do when a developer comes to the neighborhood and has the meeting meeting, in this case, multiple meetings that we all encourage developers to have. This is a developer's proposal. The neighbors had an opportunity to look at the developer's proposal. The neighbors had an opportunity to look at the by right alternative. And the neighbors, in regard to that, made suggestions about that. As far as in response to Councilor Crossley's comment about the 3 units being next to each other, there was a strong consensus in the land use process that the separating them out was better. Yes, Councilor Crossley, you're right. From a pure energy efficient point of view, we should have blocks of housing, because that would be perfect. We would really reduce energy that way if we had everything compressed to one another. But in terms of the look, the feel, the ability for privacy, the ability for noise abatement, the ability for some more actual green space, this is a far better approach. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. So next we have Councilor Maliki.
Thank you. I guess personally, I don't see that much difference between the by right option and the special permit options. So I appreciate Councilor Crossley's comments and questions about why the trouble to go through this process for no more units. And I suspect it's because 6 is the most you can do without incurring any obligations under inclusionary zoning. And I just find that kind of offensive. In this neighborhood, these are going to be very expensive units with 3 parking spaces each. And to me, it just sort of perpetuates the type of expensive housing that has been previously stated we have so much of. It would seem to be very easy to do with the same footprint and the same number of total parking spaces, 7 or 8 units, and have one of them be affordable. And that would be more consistent with what we say we want everywhere else. It's just inconsistent and incongruous to me that, we would be saying that projects like the same developer's project at River and Elm, which is sort of close to the kind of sucky commuter rail service where you get 10 trains a day, that can get by with 1 space each. And something here where you're near the green line, even if it's slow, you can count on a train every 12 minutes or so, that we're going to give them 3 parking spaces plus the visitor spaces. Also, it's kind of odd to me that we're saying this is going to protect the neighborhood against this becoming an extension of Boston College. It seems to me there's a lot of, very wealthy parents out there who will buy units, for their kids. And this is something where you could have the one college student whose parents bought the unit, and he could have three roommates, and between them they could have 3 cars, because why not? They've got the spaces. So those are my reservations and why I expect to be voting no on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Vice President Lipoff.
Oh, there's so much here. I agree with a lot of what the councilors from Ward 7 have said. One of the things that has been driving me crazy, and Councilor Grossman really put it into the best words, is that when it comes to parking, You know, there are some people here who have said to me, we can't give 3 spaces because they're going to go out and buy a third car if they don't have one. That's not the way life works. You know, if you offer the space, the family's going to use what they're going to use. If they have 1 car and they work at BC and somebody works from home, they may have 1 car. Those other 2 spaces, which nobody will see, they're underground, may be used for kids' equipment, for bicycles. You're not going to go out and spend $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 in a car because you happen to have a 3rd space. So I think we've gotten a little nutty about the whole parking thing. We talk about our values. We talk about our climate goals. Those are not our written rules and laws. Our zoning code is. So I would say to Councilor Crossley, who's doing a wonderful job working at this very difficult task, and to all of us, get it done. We work within our zoning code right now, and not with what we're trying to do or not with what our goals are. It's nice to keep them in the forefront of our mind, but on land use, we look at each one on its own. And I really, it pushes my button when I hear anything about treating one side of the city differently than the other. Since I was a little kid, when my father was an alderman in the 1970s, we talked about that around the table. If there's anything that we should be trying to do as elected officials is bring both sides of this city together and not amplify that. On land use, we look at what our zoning is. That's what we do. And we look at the by right, and we look at what the developer is willing to bring in front of us. Now, by special permit, everything is open, and we can that's malleable, we can change it, but there's a lot of work that's done with the neighborhood before. There is a process, working with the councilors, working with the neighborhood, looking at the by right, talking to planning, and what comes in front of us is what we judge. If we are going to start going outside of our zoning code and asking people for 15, 20, 30 units, which I've gotten some telephone calls on this one saying, why not? It's more complicated than that. There are rights in ownership of real estate and what the developer and his rights are, and we can only work within what we know. And that by right, with 4 driveways and, you know, in the teens, the number of cars that are all around is just not as good as this very interesting plan that is in front of us. And I would urge my colleagues not to compare every single one. The size of this lot isn't the size of the lot of the ones that were mentioned tonight. There are characteristics that are very individual to each one, and you really can't compare them up against each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Leary, you need to ask for more time.
Thank you, Madam President. Could I have 30 seconds?
Councilor Leary would like 30 seconds. All in favor, say aye. Please go ahead.
I would like to make the motion to send this item back to the committee.
Councilor Greenberg, had you sent that? Had you made that motion already? Yeah, I think Councilor.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, then I amplify the motion.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. And Councilor Greenberg, you also wanted to speak, and I think you might need more time as well. You need to ask for more time as well.
May I have more time, please?
How much would you like?
30 seconds.
30
Thank you.
seconds. Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Please go ahead.
I appreciate everyone's comments, and I just, being on land use for the past 4 years, every project that comes before us, we look for what public good is served with this project as they ask for waivers. And I think we can have this project come back to us and look for more public good. I think there are a lot of options that this project has that could offer the city more public good. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Krinsman.
Thank you, Madam President. I appreciate the councilors bringing this up, putting it on second call, and I appreciate the discussion that we've had tonight. I have listened intently as my colleagues have spoken. I I went to review the special permit criteria, and I noticed that we're essentially supposed to grant a special permit if the public convenience and welfare will be served. It's sort of an overriding principle. And it feels to me a little bit like people are making the argument that the public service and welfare isn't served enough. And I don't see that as being our role to step in and say it has to be served a little bit more, but rather just sort of judging as a quasi-judicial body whether that criteria is met. And in this case, I think it is. In terms of parking, as we've discussed on zoning and planning, I am not a fan of parking minimums. I think they make no sense. When it comes to parking maximums or prohibitions, especially outside the village centers, I'm not sure I'm there yet. I think we owe it to people to allow developers to build the amount of parking that they think they need to sustain their developments and to make their development successful. And then lastly, when it comes to land use, I have a tendency to listen to the councilors from the ward. I know that when it came to Riverside, I was appreciative that folks were listening to the Ward 4 councilors. And it is generally my policy to hear what the councilors from the ward have to say. In this case, I think there is unanimous support from the 3 Ward 7 councilors. So I am inclined to do a lot of things, but I'm inclined to go along with that support, vote against sending this back to committee, and support the special permit as approved by committee. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. Councilor Bowman.
Thank you very much. I would say that, as I said in the land use meetings on this project, that I would have loved to have seen this project be many more units. I would have loved to have seen this have many fewer parking spaces, and I would have loved to have seen some affordability in this. But the reality of this project, as has been talked about tonight, is there are other alternatives. You know, one of the things I remember from business school, BATNA, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement, always understanding what will happen if you don't come to an agreement. You know, in this case, we have a very viable option that would divide the property into 3 separate properties, which is a substandard project, I think, in anybody's realm. I think the idea of being able to have parking spaces, have them be hidden, you know, allowing a little more green space, it just functionally looks like a better space. One thing that was not mentioned about this, in addition to being an all-electric project, is that it is an all-accessible project with either elevators or access to elevators in the new buildings. There's the historic preservation of the historic building and great detail and expense to be spent on historic references in the other buildings. You know, I think the thing is that about this project is if we wanted more units, if we wanted less parking, that's a conversation that should have happened 2 years ago. It should have been happening with planning. It should have been, they should have really just not letting this process go forward. And that's a little bit on us. We took up residential zoning at the beginning of my first term, and we put it aside. So if we had successfully, you know, enabled more density, even more gentle density, this would likely have more units associated with it. So I do believe the developer when he said that he's going to move forward with a by right option if this doesn't go forward. Just the economics of interest rates continuing to go up, the high purchase price of the building, of the properties. I just don't think he can afford to sit around and spend another 2 years trying to figure out what the next project is. So, and again, it's 6 units. I'd love it to be more, but I also think that, you know, it's something we might want to consider taking another look at our inclusionary zoning for that 6 to 9 and understand there are clearly projects where that makes sense, but there might be some projects where it doesn't economically make sense because of building conditions, interest rates. You might have to look at that. So from this aspect, I do urge my colleagues to vote yes on this project. You know, this is a good project. It could be, you know, I think we all have ideas on how it could be a better project, but I certainly think it's a far better project than the one we will no doubt get if we don't vote this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call on Councilor Humphrey, with respect to the inclusionary zoning, I can tell you that our inclusionary zoning ordinance has a look-back provision in it, that after 5 years, it requires us to go back and look in how well we've done. And the planning staff has agreed to add a look at including in some way projects that have 3 to 6 units. So that would be part of next year's work. There'll be more to say about that later. I just happen to know about that now. Councilor Humphrey.
Thank you, Madam President. I'll be brief and just associate myself with the remarks from Councilor Bowman and also Councilor Krinsman. If I were starting this from scratch and I was making all the decisions, this is probably not the exact thing that I would land on, but I'm not. It's a process that we all have to come up with the votes for, and I don't think that the petitioner is bluffing in terms of if we send this back for further review and work, I don't think we get a better project or refinements on this proposal. I think we just get the by right option. I think this is better than the by right option. So even if I'm disappointed about the number of units in proximity to transit, that's not a compelling enough reason to block this special permit proposal in favor of the by right proposal. And I agree with what Councilor Krinsman said, which is that I'm not entirely sure what the special permit rationale is for going against this, even if we might want something better. So I'm not going to be supporting the motion to send it back, even if it's not exactly what I would like to see here. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Markowitz.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm glad you said that, Councilor Humphrey, because I think, you know, I'm sympathetic to the idea that you could have had more units here and that it's close to the T. That's not what the petitioner came forward with. When we were in land use, that did come up in some sense, and at the time I believe he said it wasn't economically viable. What that leads me to conclude is if we take it back, we're going to get the buy right option. The 6 is better than the 4, and I just don't think it'll go anywhere. I'd also like to support what Councilor Gentile and I think Councilor Baker said earlier. I do tend to try to follow what my colleagues in the ward say. I wish that would always happen. In our case, it hasn't always. Not that it should be an absolute, but I'll just remind people, it's more than a courtesy. I think it's also paying a recognition to the fact that sometimes the counselors on the ground and this is true of every ward here, every one of you I'm looking at, put a considerable amount of time into these things, and as imperfect as we all are, I think oftentimes they probably have the best lay of the land. So for those 2 reasons, but primarily the fact that I don't think we get anything better out of this. We're going to get 4 units, which aren't going to look as good. No way, in any case, would we ever have gotten anything that would be affordable. Even if you built 12 units there, I doubt the square footage is going to be less than $600 or $700 a square foot regardless. So while I'm sympathetic to the idea of putting more there, I don't think we can get there. And for that reason, I don't support sending it back either. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Councilor Kalis, you'd like to speak again.
I do want to speak again, and I'll be brief. I'm disappointed in this whole project, but I will support it because of what Councilor Bowman said, and she's right. This should have started when this first came up, and it's disappointing. We've been working on zoning for years and years now, moving towards, and we have the Communities Act. This is a perfect location for more units, and we didn't take advantage of it. And you know, if it goes back and we get the buy right, that's even worse. So I will support it.
Okay. Is there anybody else? Okay, so we're going to be voting on the motion to send this back to committee made earlier by Councilor Greenberg. Should we call the roll?
Councilor Baker.
No.
Councilor Bowman.
No.
Councilor Crossley.
No.
Councilor Danberg.
No.
Councilor Downs.
No.
Counselor Gento,
No.
Counselor Greenberg,
Yes.
Counselor Grossman,
No.
Counselor Humphrey,
No.
Counselor Kalis,
No.
Counselor Kelly,
No.
Counselor Krinsman,
No.
Counselor Laredo,
No.
Counselor Leary,
Yes.
Counselor Lipoff,
No.
Counselor Lucas,
No.
Counselor Maliki,
Yes.
Counselor Markowitz,
No.
Counselor Noel,
No.
Counselor Norton,
No.
Counselor Oliver,
No.
Counselor Ryan,
Yes.
Counselor Wright,
No.
President Albright.
No.
Motion fails with 4 yeas, 20 nays.
Okay. Going on to, I think we'll do the committee of the whole ones first, and then we'll come.
We didn't vote on the main item.
Oh, sorry. We have to go, wait, now we have to vote on the main item. Call the roll on the main item. Thank you.
Counselor Baker,
Aye.
Counselor Bowman,
Aye.
Counselor Crosley,
Aye.
Counselor Danberg,
Aye.
Counselor Downs,
Aye.
Counselor Gento,
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg,
No.
Counselor Grossman,
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey,
Aye.
Counselor Kalis,
Aye.
Counselor Kelly,
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman,
Aye.
Counselor Laredo,
Aye.
Counselor Leary,
No.
Counselor Lipoff,
Aye.
Counselor Lucas,
Aye.
Counselor Maliki,
No.
Counselor Markowitz,
Aye.
Counselor Noel,
Aye.
Counselor Norton,
Aye.
Counselor Oliver,
Aye.
Counselor Ryan,
No.
Counselor Wright,
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 20 yeas, 4 nays.
Now we can go on. There were several items referred to a committee of the whole. Counselor Grossman, would you like to speak about these items?
Sure, Madam President, just procedurally, should I separate or perhaps take together 125-23 and 127-23?
Yes,
I
please.
think 129 is a
Separate.
separate. Okay. So the two items that we've asked to be referred to a committee of the whole, the first 125-23 is a request from Her Honor the Mayor to appropriate $1.4 million from the fiscal year 22 certified free cash to provide a bridge grant to the Newton Public Schools for expected significant increase in student out-of-district costs in fiscal year 24. The second item, 127-23, is a request from Her Honor the Mayor, requesting authorization to appropriate and expend $10 million in free cash for the Lincoln Elliott Elementary School construction project. So President Albright and I discussed this at length, and I think you're all in receipt of a letter from the mayor, which was also in her newsletter, referencing these two items in conjunction with a separate plan that she has put before the retirement board as somewhat of a package to, for lack of a better word, perhaps soften the blows of the failed override and how we might put together some different uses of our cash and other mechanisms to fund some of the critical items in our budget that certainly that the mayor has spoken to and is as yet to be determined by this council. I feel, and I will let President, well, I guess you can't really speak for yourself unless you come sit in one of these chairs. So I'll just speak for myself. I feel that it's important, particularly given the scale of these items as part of a larger plan and as part of a citywide discussion of where we go from here, particularly where it concerns an unusually high amount of free cash this year, where it concerns other possible sources of cash and other accounts in our city budget, and where it concerns the possibility of some significant changes to our pension funding schedule, that these items are of interest to the entire council and that we should be discussing them as one package rather than trying to take them piecemeal and approve them one at a time. I also just note to the council, in budget years past, I think I've presided over 3 at this point, and each year they've gotten slightly more interesting. I'm sure this year will not disappoint. But each year we come out, I think, with a lot of frustration over how little say we have. This is a moment that we have some say. And I think that it deserves really careful consideration and deliberation by all of us. I also would like to, and others can tell me if you agree with this, but I would like to request that along with these items, that the administration share with us what their thinking is for the remainder of the free cash that we have and some of these other potential sources of cash that came out in public debate and discourse in the override process, so that we can really thoughtfully consider it as a whole, particularly because on the heels of this, we'll then be getting the mayor's proposed budget and really be in the weeds of our budget process. So I'm happy to share any other thinking, but I would rather have these discussions as a council together rather than try to have it in finance and then have it again as a full council, given what I think the import and the wide interest will be in the impact of these. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Laredo.
I'll be very brief, Madam President. I think the Chair of Finance's suggestion is excellent. I know you, Madam President, the Councilors Grossman, Vice President Lipoff, and Councilor Markowitz have been hard at work meeting as a small group. I think it will be very important for all of us as a whole to be able to hear the same thing at the same time. And then I would expect to try to give you our collective guidance as to what we want to do as a council. Since as much as I like all 24 of us, I don't think 24 of us can speak effectively as one voice, and that's why we have elected leadership to do that for the council. So I think it's quite the right way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gentile, is your hand up from the last time, or would you like to speak?
No, I was hoping to speak.
Okay, go ahead then.
So I certainly have no opposition to discussing these things in the committee of the whole. I just wanted to better understand what folks were thinking about as far as schedule. I believe we have a committee of the whole meeting on Thursday morning, but I also am under the impression that that is only to discuss the item regarding the pension board, or are these items also to be discussed at that meeting?
No, that the meeting the meeting on Thursday is just to discuss the pension retirement issue with COLA.
Okay. It will be,
let me just tell you that the second meeting, the second committee of the whole that Councilor Grossman just spoke about is tentatively scheduled for April 26th. That's a Wednesday.
Okay, all right, that answers my question. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Kalis.
I think this is a great idea. If I can go through the president, or maybe the president knows, would you invite Maureen to answer questions or be there just to clarify things, just so as we're discussing, we have real-time information?
Councilor Grossman.
So certainly, I would expect Ms. Lemieux would be invited and I hope present at the meeting. I don't know what her schedule is, and as President Albright spoke to, we've been looking at Wednesday night, April 26th for this meeting. A lot has happened really quickly, and it's only April 3rd, so I would stay tuned on that point. Our intent is April 26th. I think we need to talk a little bit further about who else should be invited, but I think that there are some other city administrators that could potentially shed light on this conversation. Perhaps Mr. Shaughnessy, if he's available, would be appropriate given some of the other subject matter that I expect folks might want to talk about. But I think that we need to have that discussion. And if there are others, by the way, that you would like to hear from and think are critical to this discussion, please don't be shy in letting us know. I certainly don't intend to drag every department head in for the committee of the whole, but those who can help us understand the plan and arrive at whether we feel comfortable approving it or not. Perfectly happy to invite them.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else that wants to speak on this? Okay, I guess we can call the roll.
This one is for item 125-23. Counselor Baker.
Aye.
Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
For two items?
Counselor Crosley.
Excuse me, but I thought this was for two items?
I'll do roll call for each.
Oh, okay. Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile.
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Kritzman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz.
Aye.
Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Counselor Oliver.
Aye.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 24 yeas, 0 nays. And now for the next item, 127-23. Counselor Baker. Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
Counselor Crossley.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile.
Aye.
Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo.
Aye.
Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff. Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz.
Aye.
Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Counselor Oliver.
Aye.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 24 yeas, 0 nays.
Thank you. Counselor Grossman.
Thank you, Madam President. So the next item that I would like referred to Committee of the Whole is number 129-23, a discussion on the percentage growth rate to fully fund the pension trust and impact on the city budget. And I'm just going to read this one out. Councilors Albright, Lipoff, Grossman, and Markowitz requesting a meeting with the City Council's Committee of the Whole to discuss our study with school committee member Chris Bresky of the Newton Retirement Board's plan that increases funding to the pension trust annually by 9.6%, its request for cost of living increase, and its impact on our city and school services annually until full funding is achieved. I'm sure you all saw in the packet a few pieces of information, memo, and some slides that give you a little bit of background on what the counselors who are the co-docketers on this item have been up to. So approximately 8 to 10 months ago, President Albright and I began initially speaking with school committee member Chris Bresky. Pretty early on, invited in Tony LaGalbo to the conversation, who I think many of you know and is the mayor's appointee to the retirement board and a really respected financial thinker in our community. And pretty early on, Councilor Lipoff joined us, and then ultimately Councilor Markowitz as well. It was a very informal group of discussions at first, taking a look at our pension funding schedule and what the impact of our growth rate of our pension contributions was going to mean for our city budget today and into the remainder of the plan until we reached full funding. And we have found some pretty interesting things. The conversations have been more and more detailed and in-depth over the course of the 8 to 10 months. And I just want to point out that this started pre any discussion of the override or any introduction of the override, and continued through it in recognition that even if the override was successful, this topic was still really important not widely understood by the community, although I think pretty well understood by the council in terms of what was coming from an impact perspective, but really ramped up considerably in the last few weeks once the mayor came forward with her own plan, which she presented to the retirement board last Tuesday. I think you also know from the statement that was posted in our packet that President Albright and school committee member Bresky made their own statement and presentation to the retirement board, especially in recognition of how quickly things were moving. So this committee of the whole, the purpose of this is to really share with all of you what we've looked at and what the preliminary thoughts are that came out of it, and to really seek your feedback and guidance, and to open up what I think is a really important and consequential discussion, and again, is moving really quickly in our city. Also, in recognition of the fact that if the cost of living increases that the mayor suggested to the retirement board are ultimately voted by the retirement board, that then comes back to us. The council would have to approve any cost of living adjustment increases. So we think it's important to have this committee of the whole as soon as possible. The retirement board is meeting again Thursday at 1, which is why we asked all of you for your availability earlier than that. And I know at times that we don't typically meet, but given the importance of this, the speed at which it's moving, we really want to share with you everything we can and be as transparent as possible, and also seek your feedback as much as possible before the conversation continues at the retirement board that afternoon. And others from the group who I really want to thank, because it's been a tremendous amount of work, and I especially want to thank our president and our colleague on the school committee, Mr. Bresky, who have put in tremendous personal time and effort into studying and moving this along. So with that, I'll stop, and if others want to add anything, especially from the group, please do.
Councilor Leary.
I also just want to thank you, my colleagues who've been working on this very, very much. I mean, I was impressed with the material that was in the packet. It was very clear, and the hard work that you went into this during this very difficult time. I mean, you'd have the foresight and the understanding, and to realize what we need to do and be able to move so quickly. I'm very impressed and very grateful for your work, and I just wanted to say that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Gentile.
Thank you, Madam President. I had one question and one comment, so I'll do both of them at the same time. The question is, has the retirement board been informed of our meeting on Thursday as a courtesy in case they want to follow along? So that's my question. And my comment to my colleagues is, I want to strongly encourage you that before you take a position on any of these retirement board items, that you have all of the information so you can make the best informed decision possible. It's a complex issue. That's why we pay good money to our actuary at Siegel to provide us with these much needed numbers. And I don't believe that we have them all yet. And I don't know if we'll have them in order to be making any informed statements on Thursday. I can't implore you enough to make sure that you have the information. These are not novel ideas. They've come up twice in the last 10 years. One thing I can tell you is that there can be some savings in the short term, but at a considerable expense in the long term, which is why they have been rejected, or certain items have been rejected in the past. So please, it looks like certain members of our certain colleagues have already come to a conclusion. I'm just asking the rest of you to make sure you have all the information.
So
important.
Counselor Gentile, if I could just add that I was asked by one of our colleagues, what are we voting on Thursday? And I assured this counselor that there is no vote to be taken on Thursday. This is just purely to share the information that we've learned. No votes.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. I just got a little nervous when I heard that the 8 o'clock timing was being done because of the meeting of the retirement board at 1 or 2 that afternoon. So I'm glad to hear that no one's going to be asked, you know, to vote on.
Absolutely. There's nothing, we have nothing before us.
All right, good.
Counselor Markowitz.
Thank you, Madam President. You already said it. I just want to add to that. Our whole objective in Thursday is just to try to bring the level of understanding up to where we are. As everyone has said, it's a very complex issue, and because of the COLA proposal by the mayor, there's just a lot to digest. So I don't think there was ever an expectation that this is probably not the only discussion we're going to have about it. This is really just bringing everybody up to a level where we all have the same level of understanding. You can understand what work has been done, and you can see what the alternatives that we have today are. But I don't think anybody is anywhere gone near a foregone conclusion or even really ready to go for the final pitch to the pension board. This is just a step in a process. You know, we'd like to go, you don't want to do this forever, but I think we all recognize that whatever time it takes us to get through this is the time it will take us to get through this. So we make sure everyone does understand it, because that is critical. So with that.
Vice President Lipoff.
And just to let everybody know, we've been digging into the numbers, but it's more conceptual. And the pension board has promised to keep an open mind, and they have their own person who is an actuarial, who's going to run the numbers. So this is going to be completely vetted, and so we're not here with anything definitive, but we've spent enough time to feel that the concept is one worth presenting to you and considering.
Councilor Grossman.
I just want to answer the question that, yes, the retirement board is informed that we're meeting. In addition, my colleagues from this group spoke beautifully about what the intent is on Thursday. It is possible that the retirement board may be voting on something on Thursday afternoon. So part of what we think is important is getting a feel and feedback from all of you on the conceptual level of where you are, because we know that all 24 of us are not going to be able to show up at 1 in the afternoon at the retirement board meeting, and it's possible that things may progress quickly from there. So that's why the timing of this is important. Were that not taking place, were the mayor's proposal not before the retirement board, and were the retirement board not debating it, I think we would have taken quite a bit more time before bringing this to all of you. Those are not the circumstances at this time. So this is the best procedure we could come up with to get all of you up to speed and share it all and get your feedback as quickly as we could. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Downs.
Hi, thank you, Madam President. I wanted to echo Councilor Leary's thanks to the people who've been working hard on this, and I'm very interested to learn more. I also think that Councilor Gentile has a point that it's very important to know as much as you can going into this. And I would encourage my colleagues, if you haven't recently done so, to reread the Citizens Advisory Group report from, I believe it was 2009. You don't have to go into the numbers, but just read the summaries. They're very helpful. And thank you. I look forward to Thursday.
Councilor Gentile, do you want to speak again? Is that a no?
No, yes. Just one final point. One thing that I think that Thursday could be used for is the council may want to ask for some numbers that have not been asked for already. I believe that there are 4 different funding schedules that the retirement board has asked for information, 4 different scenarios. Those are the numbers that I'm talking about, those kinds of numbers. It may be that the council, you know, obviously we don't want to add too much to the workload, but if there is a scenario or 2 that we would like to get some information on, I think that we could possibly come to some agreement on that on Thursday. So I'd encourage people to be thinking about that.
Okay. I don't see any other hands, so we can vote on this one.
Counselor Baker. Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
Counselor Crossley.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gento. He was, Counselor Gento?
Aye.
Thank you. Counselor Greenberg.
Aye.
Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
Aye.
Counselor Krinsman.
Aye.
Counselor Laredo. Counselor Leary.
Aye.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
Aye.
Counselor Maliki.
Aye.
Counselor Markowitz.
Aye.
Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton.
Aye.
Counselor Oliver.
Aye.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
Aye.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 24 yeas, 0 nays.
So just before we leave this totally, there will probably be another 2-slide deck, if you want to call it that, posted tonight with some updated data. Yes, I know, one more item. So now, Counselor, excuse me, Counselor Krinsman.
Thank you, Madam President. I get emotional over referrals to committee as well, so I can appreciate that. So what we have before us is item 123-23. This is the request for postponement of further financial commitments on future artificial turf projects. The reason it is before us is because under our council rules, it says that no petition admitted to the council, addressed to the council, the subject of which has been disposed of during the preceding 12-month period shall be referred to any committee except by a majority vote of the council. The rule also says that refusal to refer to a committee shall constitute a denial of the petition on the ground that no further action by the council is deemed necessary. So given that we took up a citizen's petition on this exact same topic about a month and a half ago, that's why this rule is applicable. Again, my recommendation is that we deny the petition so that it has the same result as our previous one, which was no action necessary. Also, in light of the fact that the President and others have filed a petition requiring us to have a discussion with Parks, Rec, and Culture about artificial turf, which I think is what we all want to have. So, with that.
Okay, Counselor Baker, did you have a comment about this one? No?
Procedurally, it just has to
Okay.
be at second call because of the discussion, that's all.
Okay. Does anybody have a comment? Counselor Maliki.
Thank you. I couldn't disagree with more that this is unnecessary. Since we had the discussion on the citizens petition, we've seen the administration come forward with the proposal for adding an artificial turf field at our Albemarle. It seems to be moving very quickly. I think it's very important that we have review and discussion of all the financial implications of replacing turf fields and adding new turf fields before we vote on any more financial commitments. Not only are there the concerns about the PFAS and lead and other environmental and health concerns with artificial turf, the request is going to be for city funding because CPA funds cannot be spent on artificial turf. The number that
until very recently, we saw was 1.1 million for the turf at Albemarle. Now it's 2.1 million. That would be coming out of city funds just after citizens rejected an override. And we'd be saying, we're willing to spend, you know, 2 million on a turf field when we're short on funding for many other more essential needs. The idea that we would not even be willing to discuss this item, you know, it seems like we're afraid to, not me, but I think many colleagues don't seem to want to have to take a position or even acknowledge the potential long-term financial consequences of adding a turf field now and potentially having to dispose of it when state law may have changed to treat this as hazardous waste, or the industry may change and the cost could be very burdensome in the future. It'd be like being saddled with, it's kind of analogous to being saddled with asbestos shingles on your house, or when we had to dispose of that house on Newtonville Ave at great expense. So I think we need to get this information. The discussion item that was docketed, it is very, very comprehensive, and I really don't have any expectation, practically speaking, that it would get maybe not even scheduled for discussion, but certainly not completed before we're going to have to vote on the Albemarle project, for one thing. So I would like to have the discussion focused on the financial implications in a much more timely manner than I expect that we'll be able to do the very broad other docket item. Thank you.
Councilor Gentile.
So a question for the chair, Councilor Krinsman. Councilor Krinsman, I thought I heard when you were citing whatever you were citing, it was the charter or whatever, that it was referring to petitions and not bringing back petitions. And this is a docket item. Did I mishear?
My understanding, my understanding from the clerk is that if a matter has been dealt with by the city council, and if the matter was substantially similar, whether it was filed by a councilor or a citizen's petition or any other way, that if it's a similar matter that arises and is referred to the council, then that rule applies.
All right, so it wasn't a petition versus a docket item. Okay, so let me just say this. I don't agree with Council Maliki on this subject matter. I have supported the turf fields in the past, and I think that we need to have them. So I don't agree with the docket item, but one thing that concerns me is us trying to limit one another on items that we docket. We docket all kinds of items. And I think that you always have some wide berth as to whether something is similar or dissimilar. Personally, I think that this item is, even though I disagree with it, is dissimilar enough from what we have discussed in the past that it should be allowed. And I would want the same courtesy extended to me. And I would suggest that you think about that all very much, because you may find yourself in a similar position at some point. So I think the item should be allowed to be docketed.
Thank you. Councilor Downs.
Thank you. I'm going to agree with both Councilor Maliki and Councilor Gentile, which you may note is fairly unusual. That it is partly a courtesy. Also, this is information that we do not have about the costs of disposal, and that I will really need to have in order to vote to support our athletic fields. So I hope that we will docket it and discuss it and do the study. Thank you.
Councilor Kelly.
Very briefly, I thank Councilor Downs for saying what I wanted to say is I think we need this information. We haven't seen it yet. We need the comparative analysis. We need to review this. We really, I believe, need to halt moving forward in this direction. I respect Councilor Gentile disagrees substantively, but not in terms of procedure. And I think that this item should be docketed, and it is different enough with a new request that I hope the council will vote to move forward on this.
Is there any, Councilor Leary?
I find myself in agreement with Councilor Gentile on this, and I share his concern about also that we actually need turf fields in order to meet our goals, and they're a very important part of our plan for athletic fields. But every voice should be heard, and I'm interested in finding out any more details I can. I actually think the new turf is much less toxic than the old turf that we have that's already 12 years old. Thank you.
Councilor Lucas?
Thank you, President Albright. I will be brief. I do think we do. We do need turf fields in Newton, but we also need information on them. And I thought this docket item would have provided that information in terms of the usage of the turf fields, the cost, the health benefits, the risk of using turf. So I think we should have that conversation, and we should keep this docket item. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Reno.
So while I personally, like Councilor Gentile, certainly favor the use and continued use of turf fields, and I think they're a necessary part of our athletic program, indeed a vital part in order to be able to do it. I also think that the principle that Councilor Gentile and Councilor Leary articulated about the ability of us to get information and to respect the wishes of our colleagues who wish to discuss something is critically important. We lose absolutely nothing except perhaps some time, but I'm not on programs and services, so the time is of less concern to me rather than some others. But in all seriousness, we have an obligation to listen carefully, to gather all the evidence, to listen to pros and cons before we make a decision. I think that's what this request is about. And hey, if I can be educated here and someone wants to persuade me why my thinking is wrong, that's what that's what this body is for. So I think we should go ahead and hear the petition, the docket item. Thank you.
Councilor Grossman.
I'm with Councilor Krinsman on this one. All joking aside about time, I actually think it's a real thing, and sometimes we meet to death on topics that we've discussed at length. I think that we've gotten a lot of information on this topic. We are poised to get more information on this topic, and that it's occasionally appropriate to manage our dockets a little bit more carefully. So I'm not in favor of moving forward on this item. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Oliver.
Great, thank you, Madam President. I'm going to agree with Councilors Gentile and Grossman on this one. And I stress the "and" because they seem to be coming at it from slightly different perspectives. However, I do have a question to the chair, I believe. Are we certain that during this discussion, we are going to be receiving new information this time around? Is that a fair question at this point? Or would the new information solely come through the possibility of a further study?
Councilor Krinsman.
Thank you. I think the question was, is there new information, or are we getting new information, essentially? Okay. Appreciate the question, because I was actually raising my hand to say that what has already been filed, well, first of all, I want to say all my colleagues are right. And what you're right about is that I didn't do a good enough job of explaining to you why I'm supporting what I'm supporting tonight. So I'm going to give you all a chance to sort of rethink the way you want to vote on this after I explain a little something else. We have item 6323. before us already. That's an item that's been filed. It was filed after the citizens petition was voted no action necessary. And that item, which Programs and Services will probably be taking up in April, is a discussion with city staff regarding a cost-benefit analysis on grass fields. And it is exactly what I think folks are talking about and what folks want to happen. They want to get more information. That is perfectly fine. That is what we as a committee and a council sort of agreed to do in the face of the citizens petition. We didn't want to put on hold the two projects that were at the high schools for that. But we did want to have the discussion and we did want to get more information. And I've spoken with Commissioner Banks, who says that she is working on getting additional information. And again, I'm hopeful that we're going to have that discussion in April. Set that aside for a moment. The citizens petition said that no project shall be funded until several things occur. And the docket item before us tonight also says no funding and no project shall be funded until certain studies are conducted. Again, those two items are the same, the one that was in the citizens petition and the one tonight. What is different and distinguishable is the item that we have already admitted as a council sits before Programs and Services. Programs and Services will be taking up, and it will get us additional information. Does that answer your question, Councilor Oliver?
You're all
Yeah,
set, Council.
that is exactly what I was after. I believe what I just heard is we have the item that we are looking for to provide more information. Therefore, I believe that this item might be superfluous to what we've already heard and what's coming up, hopefully later this month. Therefore, I don't see why we would need to support both. I'll be voting no on this one. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Gentile, did you want to speak again?
All set, thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? Councillor Vice President Lipoff.
Just quickly, that to me sounds like it's redundant. We're going to get everything done with what's already docketed. We're not squelching conversation or anything. And this, to me, seems like housekeeping. Thank you.
Councillor Ryan.
Yeah, I'm supporting Councilor Krinsman on this because I'm in Program Services and we've so-called beat this one to death, but it's set up the way we set it up in Programs and Services, and this is the way we're had already decided to go forward with it. Thank you.
Is there anybody else, Councillor Kelly? Councillor Kelly, did you want to speak?
I did have just one clarification question. I think I just heard Chair Krinsman say that the item that's coming before them, hopefully in April, is with Commissioner Banks' input, is to provide costs about grass fields. Is it about just the grass fields, or is it the comparison between natural grass fields and artificial turf? That's what this item is getting at, is looking at both cost benefits of both natural and artificial. And maybe that is what you meant and I just heard you wrong. Can you just clarify that, Councillor Krinsman?
Please go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. You're right that what I said, I read the title of the item, which is a cost-benefit analysis on grass fields, and the articulation of the item described that it is a cost-benefit analysis of grass fields as compared to additional artificial turf fields. So I think the answer is that yes, it is the comparative analysis. I didn't say it because it wasn't in the title, but yes, it should cover what I think you're looking for.
All right.
Okay. Councillor Malachy.
Thank you. So the docket 6923 requesting the cost benefit analysis, we get the analysis and it doesn't require us to do anything with it particularly. I would like to see us, once we get the financial information, which we do not have, take a position on it and vote on whether we want to continue to treat turf fields as essential or not.
You all set? Councillor Malachy? Okay. Councillor Gentile?
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
If the item turns out in committee to be redundant, you NAN it.
Okay. You all set, Counselor Gentile?
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay, so the motion was to reject the item. So we can vote on that now.
Motion to reject.
Yes, motion to reject.
Thank you. Counselor Baker. Counselor Bowman.
Aye.
Counselor Crossley.
Aye.
Counselor Danberg.
Aye.
Counselor Downs.
Aye.
Counselor Gentile.
No.
Counselor Greenberg. Aye. Counselor Grossman.
Aye.
Counselor Humphrey.
Aye.
Counselor Kalis.
Aye.
Counselor Kelly.
No.
Counselor Krinsman.
Yes.
Counselor Laredo.
No.
Counselor Leary.
No.
Counselor Lipoff.
Aye.
Counselor Lucas.
No.
Counselor Maliki.
No.
Counselor Markowitz.
No.
Counselor Noel.
Aye.
Counselor Norton.
No.
Counselor Oliver.
Yes.
Counselor Ryan.
Aye.
Counselor Wright.
No.
President Albright.
Aye.
Motion carries 15 yeas, 9,
Okay.
15 yeas, 9 nays.
Okay, thank you very much. Counselor Markowitz, do you have a motion for us? Yay. Thank you very much. It got very hard.